So tonight, WrestleMania Backlash takes place from inside the Youngling Center in Tampa Bay, Florida, inside the WWE Thunderdome. As always, potentially, this could be one of the final show's pay-per-view events anyway, inside the WWE Thunderdome. Of course, we know those reports are coming out that WWE is planning on returning to touring, having live fans in attendance in July, possibly with Extreme Rules being the first pay-per-view event that's going to have live fans in attendance, possibly Friday Night SmackDown on July, is it the 9th or the 16th, possibly being the first SmackDown or first television show in general to have live fans in attendance. So possibly we might be heading to the end of the WWE Thunderdome era. So Backlash, WrestleMania Backlash, not Backlash, it's WrestleMania Backlash, might be one of the final events to be inside the WWE Thunderdome, pay-per-view event certainly. So this match we're going to talk about here, we're going to be doing previews for all of the major matches tonight, so be sure to check them out on the channel. The match we're going to talk about here, as you can see on the screen, is the SmackDown Women's Championship. Bianca Belair defends her SmackDown Women's Championship against Bayley. Now, this match is going to be really interesting, I think. I think the women's division on Raw and SmackDown, to be honest, at the moment, I think the SmackDown Women's division is really light. Really, really light at the moment. I think it was Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful tweeted on Friday that there's something like 8 SmackDown superstars active in the women's division right now. You've got Bianca Belair, Bayley, Sasha Banks, Natalya, Tamina, Carmella. Who are the other two? But the fact that I'm struggling... the Riot Squad. That's it. The Riot Squad. That's it. You've got 8 female superstars on one brand as your women's division. That really isn't good enough. Now, don't get me wrong. I praise WWE for their booking of women's wrestling and their booking of female talents and the progression that they've benefited and given to women's wrestling over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. It's been fantastic. You can't question that. When WWE, out of two out of the last 3 WrestleManias, I'll get there in the end, 2 out of the last 3 WrestleManias have had female main events, you know that they are progressing women's wrestling. And they do have multiple female matches on the show. They do have females in the main events. And they have certainly progressed and changed their image of what a female wrestler can be in WWE. So you can't criticize their booking of female wrestling. What I will say, and I think this is a fair criticism here, is that the booking of just the women's divisions in general on Raw and SmackDown, and this even predates WrestleMania, has been really bad. It's not been good. It hasn't been good. Heading into WrestleMania with Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks, the main event of WrestleMania 37 Night 1, Bianca Belair, Sasha Banks, fantastic match. Arguably the match of the show, certainly in the conversation of being one of the matches of WrestleMania weekend. I think it's up there with the main event of Night 2 of WrestleMania, that Triple Threat Universal Championship match. I loved it. Bianca Belair, Sasha Banks, fantastic match, really enjoyed it. But heading into that WrestleMania match between Belair and Sasha Banks, it was terrible. The booking, the writing was terrible. And it was so confusing at the time because it didn't need to be that convoluted or that just bizarre and strange and stupid sometimes. That's really what it was. The story was simple. Bianca Belair wins the Royal Rumble. Sasha Banks is the SmackDown Women's Champion. There's the challenger. There's the champion. Yeah, that's it. And what do? They make it convoluted. They suddenly have Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair are tag team partners for a while. Can they get along? Because they're going to be opponents at WrestleMania, all that kind of stuff. And then suddenly it involves Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler and starts to involve Reginald, the top women's feud on SmackDown, heading into WrestleMania for a while, centered around a man who didn't even appear on WrestleMania in the end because he was sick. It was just bizarre, really bizarre stuff. And fortunately, I guess for WWE, is they kind of got away with it in the end. They got away with it because the story that they didn't affect the match that much because people were just excited to see Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair. People were excited to see 2 black females main event WrestleMania for the first time, which as they should. It was a massive monumental moment and they absolutely stepped up to the plate and hit a home run with it. So much so that the storyline heading into it kind of didn't matter. But that's not always going to be the case for matches. And it kind of masked what has been real bad booking and writing, maybe it's a better phrase, bad writing for the women's divisions in WWE. Take NXT out of the equation, the writing for the NXT women's division is always pretty strong. It's always pretty good. So take that out of it. But the writing for the SmackDown and Raw women's division has just not been good recently. It's just not been good. Now, when it comes to this match in particular, at WrestleMania Backlash, I'm excited for it because these are two top talents. And again, they're kind of in the same situation that they were for WrestleMania. Does the story necessarily matter that much heading into this? Not really. Not really. We're going to get a great match. And certainly when it comes to the outcome, Bianca Belair retains the SmackDown Women's Championship. I don't think anyone thinks that's not going to happen. Bianca Belair absolutely is going to retain the SmackDown Women's Championship here. You wouldn't have her win the Royal Rumble, win a main event of WrestleMania, and then drop the title weeks later at WrestleMania Backlash. That would just be bizarre. Especially considering it's her first SmackDown World Championship reign, whatever you want to call it. It's her first reign with the championship. To lose it so quickly wouldn't make any sense. The issue, I suppose, when it comes to Bayley at this point is that obviously last year she had an incredible 2020, longest reigning SmackDown Women's Champion in the company's history it was even started in 2019, didn't it? And she had a reign even prior to that when she was a babyface, and then she turned into a heel as SmackDown Women's Champion. Even though she had that break of Charlotte Flair was champion for something like 8 days or something like that. Regardless, Bayley carried the SmackDown Women's division for a while, a really long time, and she completely changed her character, her look, her ring gear, her persona, everything she changed, and it was just out of the park, knockout successful. I think she's better than she's ever been, and like I said, she carried that women's division for over a year. She absolutely carried that women's division during a really difficult time for WWE with the pandemic and those empty arena shows. Her and Sasha Banks just carried the women's division on both shows, on Raw and SmackDown, realistically at one point, because they were appearing on every show. They were appearing on NXT, Raw, and SmackDown. But the issue that Bayley kind of has now at this point is that she's so established and she's so respected that without the SmackDown Women's Championship, she kind of just turns into that talent that's almost bulletproof in the sense that she can get any talent over. And that's her role now. Because we saw it prior to WrestleMania. Prior to WrestleMania, we saw it. She feuded with Bianca Belair on SmackDown television. That was to elevate Bianca Belair to the next level. That was to elevate Bianca Belair and get her ready for winning the Women's Royal Rumble, to get her ready for WrestleMania. That was all as part of the building process of Bianca Belair. And she sort of found herself in a similar situation once again. This whole storyline, this whole feud right now is in the same vein that it was about establishing Bianca Belair as a challenger at WrestleMania. Now it's about establishing Bianca Belair as the SmackDown Women's Champion. So that's what this whole feud's been about. It's all about establishing Bianca Belair. And I think obviously at some point we're going to get Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair too. Where that's going to be, well, it depends, doesn't it? It depends. It could be, obviously, as I mentioned, Extreme Rules might be the first pay-per-view event that has live fans in attendance after WrestleMania. So possibly we could see Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair 2 at Extreme Rules. I think most likely it happens at SummerSlam. Do we get a Sasha Banks appearance tonight at WrestleMania Backlash? I think it's a possibility. I don't know if necessarily... The Sasha Banks Bayley feud last year was so great. It was so great. It did great numbers and it was a great bit of business. My only issue with it is that I wish it had have lasted longer, and I wish that they'd have strung out the breakup a little bit longer and they could have done something bigger. I suppose in retrospect now, if you do Sasha Banks and Bayley at WrestleMania, you don't get the Bianca Belair rise, which we are enjoying, and it is very important for WWE and SmackDown. I just don't know if they've had that, that blood feud last year of Hell in the Cell matches and all that kind of stuff, that if Sasha Banks comes back tonight, are her and Bayley suddenly friends again? And what happened last year, is that suddenly all gone and does that all disappeared? I don't know how I would necessarily feel about that if that was the case. So I don't know if necessarily Sasha Banks comes back to aid Bayley, maybe in the sense that Bianca Belair defeats Bayley tonight, and then post-match we see Sasha Banks return and then attack Bianca Belair and something like that. And I guess that means that Sasha Banks once again turns heel. Now, if she does turn heel, in my opinion, that's the best for her. I think she's far better as a heel than she is as a babyface. To be honest, even when she was a babyface, when she turned into a babyface to feud with Bayley and she was the SmackDown Women's Champion, to me, Sasha Banks, and maybe it's the persona, maybe it's being the boss and all whatever you want to call it, all of the monikers and nicknames that she has, for me, Sasha Banks' personality always comes across as a heel. Now, when she does that ridiculous, over-the-top, really annoying laugh, you always just go, that to me, as a viewer watching at home, I'm going, that's so annoying. It's a heel. That's what a heel would do. That's what a heel would say. That's how a heel laughs and acts. So I guess maybe Bianca Belair wins tonight, and then Sasha Banks comes out and maybe attacks her. This sets up their rematch. Sasha Banks is firmly a heel, and then once again, we're continuing to establish Bianca Belair. What I will say about this match, though, and again, I was always excited for this one. Because you're looking at two premier talents on the women's side of things, or just in WWE in general, in Bianca Belair and Bayley, to be honest. But what I did really enjoy is they did a segment this past week on SmackDown where they had Bianca Belair in the ring and Bayley was appearing via satellite, which basically means she was backstage, but she was appearing via satellite. And you had Bayley doing the usual stick of laughing, maybe being slightly over the top and condescending and all that kind of stuff. But they and again, I criticize the writers, so I've got to give them credit here. They wrote this in such a great way that essentially Bayley's talking about Bianca Belair, saying she's out of her depth and all this kind of stuff, and she's joking around and she's doing the big laugh and she's mocking Bianca Belair and talking about her big SmackDown Women's Championship earrings and all this kind of stuff. And then Bayley just switched. She just switched and she got so serious so quickly, and it just added this extra layer and just added this extra depth to this feud that hadn't been there previously, where Bayley says to Bianca Belair, look, with your hair and your ponytail, you remind me of everything that was bad about me during my earlier career. Because remember with Bayley, she had the side ponytail and she had the flashy ring gear and she was all about, happiness and optimism and hugs and hug life and all that kind of stuff. And Bayley added an extra depth to this feud when she said, look, I look at you and I see everything that was wrong about me. I see you and I see the mistakes I made when I was early on in my career. And I'm going to take advantage of that on Sunday. I'm going to win the SmackDown Women's Championship and I'm going to teach you a lesson. And it was that element of when Bayley suddenly got serious, that a match that I was looking forward to anyway, I went, man, that's good storytelling. That's really good storytelling. Now I'm even more invested in this match than I was previously. So that really took it up a level. And I have to give Bayley credit for that, because just as soon as I saw that promo on Friday night, and I mentioned this earlier on in the video here, when I talked about the bad writing and the bad booking and all of this bad stuff that we have seen with the women's divisions on both brands over the course of certainly this year, that was great writing. That was a great segment. And that, for me, is when I saw, again, Bayley, and this is the Bayley that we've come to know over the course of the last year or so, is just such a great performer. And it's such a radical change from what we knew as her character when she was in NXT and she first came to the main roster. And as a performer, as a talent, knowing that you have to change, knowing that you have to evolve and do something different, this Bayley character is so radically different from what she was doing a couple of years ago, and it's so much better. I mean, it's so much better. It's got so much more legs to it. It is so more, as I mentioned, it's got depth to it. It's got a lot of depth to it. It's got a lot of layers to it, and it's real storytelling. It is real storytelling, and it's a pleasure to watch. So, like I said, I was excited for this match anyway tonight at WrestleMania Backlash. But when I watched the promos that they did, or certainly Bayley did on SmackDown on Friday, I suddenly went, okay, that's a match that I'm really excited about. Now, that's something that I'm excited to see. Now, the outcome, I think, is relatively predictable. As I mentioned, I think it's fairly obvious that Bianca Belair retains here. I think the interesting thing will be what happens possibly after the match and what happens going forward on SmackDown. Bianca Belair's going to win tonight. She'll retain the SmackDown Women's Championship, but what does that mean for Bayley? What does she do now? Because obviously, you have to look at Bayley as well. This was someone that didn't even get on WrestleMania 37. She was on both nights, but she was in silly backstage segments with Titus O'Neil and Hulk Hogan. She was involved with the Bella Twins and all that kind of stuff. We know that the Bella Twins are hoping to come back at some point and wrestle once again. Does that involve Bayley? Have they planted the seeds there? I don't know. I don't know, but it's certainly interesting. And look, there's no doubt for me that the match is going to be very good. The match is going to be very good tonight, and I'm excited to see it, but in terms of an outcome, like I said, I think it's relatively predictable or expected here that Bianca Belair will retain the SmackDown Women's Championship. I think most people expect that to be the case. But in the same vein that I expect Bianca Belair to retain the SmackDown Women's Championship tonight at WrestleMania Backlash, I also expect it to be a very good match. And hopefully they give it time. There's not a ton of matches on this show. I think there's, 6 matches on the show? And I know these pandemic pay-per-views have been shorter by WWE's usual standards, which is, by the way, is a blessing. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So, again, I would hope that this match gets a lot of time tonight, so fingers crossed. But I'm going to go with Bianca Belair to retain the SmackDown Women's Championship, but it should be a very good match. But, of course, as always, guys, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Bianca Belair versus Bayley tonight at WrestleMania Backlash for the SmackDown Women's Championship? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. We'll be doing a WrestleMania Backlash live watch along tonight, so be sure to subscribe. Bottom right hand corner, click the notification bell. You'll be notified when we go live for the watch along tonight and when we go live for the reaction stream post show. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.